When Rotan left his conversation with Cal and Falcon, he escaped to a prairie on the top of a grass-fed hill. He stood on the summit near the Astelles. He placed his index finger and thumb on both hands together to create a diamond shape over his heart. 3 oscillating hues of green ran through his body from head to toe. A tunnel began to manifest, studded with diamonds and glares. The tunnel seemed to stretch forever and broke into an assortment of trouble. He stood in the middle of the tunnels, waiting. Diamond figures grew from the ground. Rotan jerked open his eyes, and his neon chem projected off his body like a burst of wind. He spurted to the creations and began to battle the diamond human-esque figures. He destroyed every one of them with a diamond-crusted punch to the ground. I need to make them stronger. I need to get stronger, he mused. He stood straight and placed his fist together, knuckle to knuckle, and a geyser of a green-hued neon chem climbed to the Astelles. The bold green neon chem changed to a red hue and then an orange hue. His body was drenched with the orange neon chem until it suddenly disappeared. Immediately his body's rim glowed an orange hue. Rotan opened his eyes and stretched his hands, creating bulkier figures and an increased amount. I'll start with the orange wavelength, he thought, as he jumped into the center of his creations. The figures were much quicker than the previous, moving at 50 miles per hour. Rotan dodged all their attacks as they punched and kicked him. He destroyed a few figures with a manifested diamond sword. While he continued to dodge their attacks, he became surrounded by the remaining diamond figures. They all raised their palms towards Rotan and began to shoot tiny diamond bullets. Right before the diamonds touched his skin, Rotan encapsulated himself inside of a water prism, reflecting the attack. The creations stayed on the offensive. This is perfect. I can get a grasp on absorbing the Camelot constellation. While Rotan was concealed by his water prism, he interlocked his hands in front of his heart. He activated the Camelot constellation and began absorbing the neon chem from the Astelles constellation. Rotan released his prism and shrunk himself down to the size of a bug. He appeared behind the creations at full size while he emulated a sizzle with his orange wavelength. Now, since I've absorbed the constellation fully, I can... Rotan placed out his palm, holding it out for 5 seconds while the figures rushed him. Effect my element with it. Rotan closed his hands, making a fist. A meter before the figures reached Rotan, they were all demolished by millions of diamonds that grew to the size of golf balls, penetrating and breaking their body into pieces. While the shards of the figures glistened in the sky, Rotan could only think about how he wasn't strong enough for the world to trust in his words. Rotan stood straight and took a deep breath. The roof of his manifested cave opened like a dome. He then closed his eyes and dropped his arms. The warrior tightened his fist and turned them outward, holding his position. A burst of energy covers him and his surroundings. His clothes flow in the aggressive wind along with his chain and braids. The Astelles glimmer like diamonds and the sky grows a purple-greenish haze of gas. While the sky transforms, Rotan pulls open his eyes. The Osar rays. I'll practice this technique next. He held his pose. His arms were dropped and his fist clenched with his palms out. This was the Heru pose, a pose that granted the power of the Osar rays and unlocked divine abilities. The Osar rays' cosmic neon chem flowed through the veins of Rotan. Kismet's hero brimmed with power, and his demeanor depicted that. He manifested one giant megalith of a diamond figure. He stood almost 4 meters tall and weighed an elephant. When the creature walked, the stars felt it. Rotan was fearless. He walked towards the magnificent figure. The Osar rays' boost never surprises me, he mused while he prepared to attack. However, before Rotan could attack, the creature punched a crater into the ground. Fortunately, Rotan was able to dodge the attack by shrinking his body and escaping using the Camelot constellation. He was behind the creation when it located him once again. The creature instinctively jumped at Rotan with the same fist. "All right, let's do this," Rotan shouted. He once again performed the Heru pose. This time, light particles speckled around him. An eminent glow surrounded the hero. He started to turn oxygen into water when a river moving at intense speed began to flood the cave. The creation finally landed, punching through the river, creating rain. Rotan used his orange wavelength to increase his speed and dodge the attack. Surrounding him now was a twirl of water in constant motion, creating the barber pole illusion. Before the creature could react, a slingshot of water, the size of a river, punched him. The cave was completely drowned while the current moved faster than speed. Rotan stayed protected, but the figure was destroyed. Though while the current continued, Rotan felt a sharp sting through his body. He became paralyzed and could only scream in agony. He lost his water protection and his orange wavelength rim. He then succumbed to the deadly current. While he uncontrollably flailed in the river, everything slowly began to dissipate until he fell to his back on top of the prairie hill. He looked exhausted and out of life while drenched. "I still can't maintain Akuripa. The toll it takes on my body is ridiculous." He sat up, but still sat down. He huffs while looking out onto the capital. He then gaped at the night sky, which reverted to its normal appearance. "Should I open an agency?" he mused. While he continued to ponder, his temper rose. "No, I won't submit to the world affiliates. I won't turn my back on the Panta Astelles no matter what." He stood to his feet instantly. "I'll show them. There will never be any tech that'll rival the Astelles." Rotan clapped his hands and held them in front of his heart, aligning to the Astelles once again. He looked down at his feet and noticed his alignment line had 200-centimeter diameter. "The OSAR rays took half of my gas. I'm at a level 2 alignment. It's fine, this should be enough, I'm only training." Rotan placed his fist together, knuckle to knuckle, to perform the wavelength pose. "Since the OSAR rays flushed my veins, I can practice." His neon chem once again journeyed to the stars from his body in the color of green. Rotan began to absorb the neon chem from one Astelle, and the hues began to transform hues. They went from red to orange, and then to yellow. "The yellow wavelength," the hero gutted out. Rotan held the pose, but once the hue transformed to yellow, he began to endure unbearable pain. The wavelength technique is always painful to master, he struggled to think. The yellow-hued neon chem continued to conquer the sky, rising from his body. "This sensation, this burning, my veins, they burn so bad," he painfully thought. He was forced to yell to the heavens while his body was battered by neon chem. "Just a little longer," he thought optimistically. The yellow-hued energy continued its stay, while Rotan continued to endure its consequences. This lasted for 1 full minute, when the yellow-hued sky rising, neon chem vanished. Rotan opened his eyes, and around his body was a rim of yellow neon chem. He stood straight, bruised and sore. "It still takes too long," he thought. He then took a step forward, and once his foot touched the ground, a yellow cloud of gas extinguished from his body and surrounded the area. "And I still can't hold it," he thought, as the yellow wavelength dissipated. "Well, it doesn't help that I've already used the orange wavelength. AQ Ripper reversed my neon chem flow, but still using a wavelength is always taxing, not to mention the OSAR rays." He sat down once again and monitored the sky. He began to evoke memories of Ellie and her efforts in the war. He then ruminated on how she taught him valuable lessons. One that stuck with him is how she trained him to master the Purify technique. While Rotan enjoyed the fond memories, he unwarrantedly evoked his dismal memories. He pondered on the death of Ellie and how he let her down by not being strong enough. He regretted not being able to provide backup with Falcon that day, and when he finally arrived, she had been defeated. He wondered how Ellie would handle world affairs today, after the war. He knew if she was the one who defeated Sin, then there wouldn't be any issues. But since it was him who defeated their enemy, he enabled the world to become delusional. Then his thoughts switched to the current era of Panta Astelles. He knew the world despised their lineage, but he believed they can be the generation to change things. Rotan believed Rea has no malicious intent, and neither does Sire. Kismet's hero grew anxious while thinking about the new Panta Astelles, traumatized the last 10 years, which is why he is making it a priority to restore their legacy to the way the last shaman intended it to be. Rotan continued to ruminate. Now he was focused on Sin's reign and what he had done. The world will never be the same, the warrior thought. Sin ruined their future generations and conquered their morale. Although despite all his terrible doings, Rotan still regretted killing him. The memory of Sin's death elicited, and all he could see was the blood on his hands, the blood that stained his mind. While he ruminated, his anger grew, his regret grew, his pride was belittled. He was the strongest warrior in the world, but full of regret, and didn't know which way to walk in this new climate. He thought about his father Ramu, and then the Triad sages, his mentor To, and the ways of a warrior. To calm himself down, he meditated on the words most masters of the Astelles would repeat. If a warrior has the Astelle's best interest at heart, then his actions should never be doubted. To be a true master of Mata, a warrior should imitate Kadof's way and query the Astelles. Rotan stood to his feet lethargically. Maybe I should go to the temples for a while. Well, first I should go talk to Rea. While he walked down the prairie's hill and toward the district, a small waterfall surrounded him. First it trapped his feet, causing him to repeatedly walk in the same spot. Then the water surrounded him. After that, he fell from the peak of the waterfall to its pool, continuously. Is this a trap? Who could have set this, he wondered as the cycle continued. My reflective lock wasn't active. They're definitely emitting a trap. He continued to fall from the waterfall. He interlocked his index and middle finger in front of his heart and yelled, Aversa Lake, reflecting the trap with his neon chem, ending it. The trap dissipated, and Rotan stood alone on a grass plain, analyzing his surroundings, ready for a battle. Everything around him looked normal. Who was that? I didn't recognize the neon chem, Rotan ruminated. He looked around the entire prairie and could not depict an enemy until he looked at the sky. Above him he saw an array of thorns which fell at him with intense speed, as if they weighed a hippo. They reached Rotan faster than a blink. He created a diamond barrier just before they cut through his flesh. But a few of the tiny thorns cracked the shield and slightly cut Rotan. I didn't have time to align to the Astelles. They're breaking through my barrier. While Rotan was protecting himself, a man appeared behind him. Rotan released his barrier and covered his body in diamond, while the man attempted to hit him with an all-black staff encapsulated by a green hue. The attack clinked with Rotan's diamond armor and was ineffective. However, the thorns continued to fall. Rotan began his evasion, dodging the blur-like thorns which punctured the ground, leaving notable damage. While the thorns continued to harass him from above, and this man chased him. Rotan emitted a graphite trap in his trail, incarcerating the man's feet. He then used the neon chem that flowed in his veins to aim a destructive blast at the sky to destroy the thorns. Before he can shoot the blast, he barley dodges a punch from a lady on the battlefield. The two began to fight with fists as if they were boxers. Rotan stayed efficient and didn't let his opponent land one punch. He was able to create space when he used graphite to blind her. He fell back, and so did his opponent. The woman helped her teammate escape from the graphite trap. By that time, Rotan had already aligned to the Astelles and Osars. He manifested his diamond-crusted water gun and his diamond creation figures and was ready to battle. Who are you all? How rude of us, the woman responded with a light laugh. I'm Nile and this is Nilo. We're Memphis elite, nice to finally meet the Rotan, she spoke satirically. Yes, it's our pleasure, Nilo said stoically. I wish I could say the same, Rotan retorted. What do you want? You guys know who I am, so I can only assume you're stupid. Oh no, we're quite intelligent, Rotan. We're just here to honor out contract. Contract? Don't worry, you don't need to know about the details. Just that for it to be fulfilled, we need your head, Nile said with a menacing leer. Rotan sent his diamond creations after the tandem. He had created 5 of them, and while they ran amok, he shot water bullets at his enemy for cover. Memphis elite? I've never heard of them. Who could they be working for? While the two were distracted destroying his creations, Rotan began to perform the wavelength pose. It seems I can only use red for now, since I'm at a level 2 alignment. Lucky me, he thought. Though before he could garner more attacks, Nilo used the yellow wavelength technique to bring down a town of gravity and crush the creations of Rotan. Rotan felt the unbearable force and fell to his knees. Then suddenly Nile activated an orange wavelength. We can do it too, she said, mocking the hero. Don't mock him, Nile. He is a contract worthy of our respect. Whatever, let's just hurry this up. Don't rush, he is the... Before they knew it, Rotan shrunk his body and appeared behind Nilo at full size. He emitted a contract, slapping his back and stopped his gravity technique. Before he could infect the foe, Rotan was hit by balls of explosive water, forcing him to shrink himself and escape. My alignment is getting weaker. I have to stop them soon. You aren't the hero for nothing, which is why we came prepared. Niall's neon chem changed colors from orange to yellow. Rotan was dumbfounded by this ability. How strong are they? I can't even switch my wavelength in the middle of battle, let alone in the middle of an alignment. What is going on? He ruminated concerningly. Suddenly, a patch of vines covered their battlefield from Rotan to Memphis elite. The vines were controlled by Niall, and they attacked Rotan, who used his diamond sword to exterminate them. While defending himself, Rotan began to meditate on how fortunate this tandem was to find him at this time. He had less than half of his neon chem, and this duo were heavy-handed. Rotan's contract on Nilos' gravity element was weakening, and he could feel it. While he continued to evade Niall's vines, he extinguished more neon chem. In the corner of his eyes, he witnessed Nilo change his wavelength to blue, breaking Rotan's contract. However, Rotan was far out of the reach of Nilos' ability. Niall's vines pushed Rotan almost 30 meters away from the tandem. His armor was weakened, and so was his alignment to the Camelot constellation. I have no choice, Rotan thought. He placed his right hand onto his heart, cuffing his left pectoral. He clenched his muscle and used his right hand to transfer the pulse of Osar neon chem into his veins. His body throbbed from the neon chem, leaving a shallow shockwave. The neon chem in his veins revived, and he was back to full strength. I only have 3 minutes. I'll start. Nilo appeared through a droplet of water from the vines, attacking first with his Kobalis staff. He swung at Rotan and shot neon chem blasts from his staff. Unfortunately for Nilo, he couldn't touch Rotan. He was more agile than before. He realigned to the Astelles and activated his orange wavelength. Rotan then attacked Niall, moving more than 100 miles per hour. He appeared like a bullet and punched him with a diamond-covered fist back to his partner. Tell me who sent you, and I'll let you all live, Rotan demanded, appearing before the two. We will not breach our contract. Yeah, sorry, Rotan. Nilo's real strict about that. I guess it looks like you won't be able to let us live. So what are you going to kill us? Niall stared at the hero with a sinister grin. While she leered at him, her thorns rose again in the sky, this time combining to make 3 megalith thorns. While they flew in Rotan's direction, they became coated with diamonds and ice. They crumbled into nothing, along with the vine patch. The entire battlefield had frozen over, and Niall and Nilo soon became entrapped. Their feet and ankles were immobilized by Rotan's diamonds and ice, and it was creeping up their bodies. Rotan's creations then formed from the ice surrounding them and latched themselves on for a better grip. What is going on? Nilo stoically asked. Rotan appeared within arm's distance of the tandem and spoke. It's my ultimate technique, carbon frost. Niall manically laughs. What's so funny? Rotan curiously asked. You just think you know everything, don't you? I don't know who sent you. You're a smartass too, strong as well. I think I'm beginning to get a crush on you. It's just too bad I'm going to kill you. I have to say your determination is admirable. He moved closer and began to ponder their ability to switch wavelengths. How can you guys use your wavelength like that? Tell me how to use divine eyes, Niall retorted. Rotan paused before he responded because he noticed something peculiar. I'm beginning to sense a malignant amount of neon chem neutron, and it's the negative neutron, not the positive one we use for the Osars. What the hell is going on? Rotan pondered when he created a circle in front of his heart. He began to emit positive neutron, then he began to absorb the negative neutron, and finally he reflected it against each other. Rotan purified the neon chem neutron surrounding the area and coming from Niall and Nilo. He placed the neon chem neutron, which was a multi-hued green, into a bubble and purified it with the emit, absorb and reflect technique, turning it into a pure neon chem. A person's body can't hold this much negative neutron without dying. He gazed at Memphis elite, whose wavelength was no longer active. Rotan summoned the fist of water, which roared like a rotten tide. It splashed to the ground, moving at 100 miles an hour, carrying the body of a creek. It destroyed the area where Memphis elite stood, and created a horde of debris so devastating it garnered the town's attention. Niall's patch of vines disappeared, and when the water cleared, the tandem was missing. Rotan was protected by his diamond armor while he searched the area for the two. "We will meet soon, Rotan, because someone important wants you dead," Niall's voice said, frightening Rotan and forcing him to turn. What stood behind him was two translucent figures of water held together by Nilo's gravity. The watery figures lost all bonding. Immediately after, the capital warriors appeared, along with Cal and Rotan's team. "Rotan, what happened here?"